Now, have you moved in yet, or okay?
Jerry, that shirt. Thanks guys for being here today. We're going to work through some technical difficulties because sound again does not want to work.
I just have to budget, Tommy.
I don't consider myself to be, tech savvy, so that's why it's not working. I'm sure somebody's super smart to get it working. But before we get started, I was going to pray for us, and then Jay's going to tell us a little bit about it. Today might be a little bit different. I think shorter on the talk time, a little bit more the table time, but I think Jay will kind of explain what we're doing today. And then we'll get going from there, so let's just bow our heads together. Holy Father, we just thank you for this morning, for this beautiful sunrise that we get to experience each week that reminds us, Father, of just renewed life, that it's a new day, Father, and we can just appreciate it for what it is, and we can leave our troubles behind us, Father, that we can trust in you. And so we just thank you for this opportunity to get together as men, to share our hearts with one another, to risk being vulnerable, putting ourselves out there that we might grow in relationship and connection. And through doing that, Lord, just form a community that we know you desire for us to have. So we just pray that you would just bless this time today. We ask these things in your name.
Amen. Thank you, Nick. So yeah, today is going to be a lot less about human anatomy than it was last week.
Yay!
But I missed that.
Yeah, but it's going to be a little bit different than our typical. So typical format for guys who haven't been here much is lead in prayer, speaker for about 20 minutes-ish, table talks for another 20 minutes-ish, close in prayer, and then we go on our day. It's typical Friday morning for the Harbor. But what we learned last year, and this group is always evolving. If you're on the email list, I dropped that note a couple weeks ago. This group was continuing trying to get better and evolving. One of the feedback that we got last season was we had an open forum discussion one time when Joe Kennedy was speaking, where it kind of turned into a collaborative group setting where we're talking about what the topic was, but we're doing it in a group session instead of small groups. And we got some feedback. That was a really good session. Can we do more of those? And Tom Yozwa, who I'll introduce here in a second, if you don't know him before, was like, hey, let's have one of those next week after kind of a heavier discussion that we had last week. So Tom's going to lead us through just some high-level topics, and then we're going to either break into some table talks or talk as a big group, however people would like to go. But we're going to get more time with table talks today. And two reasons for that. Number one, because I think a lot of the things that come out, that's like that aha moment or, wow, that was really good, come out in more of the table talks than it does in the big talk. And two is because we have a lot of new guys, and we want to meet each other. And I don't think we've really had that time before to be like, hey, what's your name? What's your background? Why are you here? You got kids? Do you not have kids? Where are you in your journey? And so we want to allow a little bit more time, to your point, right, Nick? A little bit more time just to get to know each other from our tables. So with that, I want to introduce Tommy. Tom, don't come up just yet because I want to tell a quick story about this. So Tommy and I were golf buddies way before this harbor ever started. Probably, what, 3-4 years ago, Tommy? Maybe more than that. And when we were on the golf course, we shared some laughs, shared some beers, maybe a couple cigars, but we never really talked about anything deeper than golf or the Broncos or the weather. And I went on a limb one time and I told him about this group that we were starting, and I said the Harbor, and it really resonated with him. He's like, that is so cool, I want to get involved in that. And the reason I tell that story, and now he's actually going to talk for us, but the reason I tell that story is because you never really know who's going to be interested in a group like this. You never really know what somebody's spiritual background or their connection with God or where they are in their journey until you get a little bit vulnerable, and you go out on that limb and you talk about something that may not be as comfortable as mainstream as talking about the Broncos or talking about the weather. So, I don't know, I thought that was a cool story, Tom, because you really had something that sparked interest in this group, and here we are. So, Tom's a great guy. He's a Colorado kid, went to Cherry Creek High School, went to UNC, played baseball. Where are you at, Baker? Did I mess that up? Did you not play baseball there, Tom?
I played baseball just in high school.
Oh, well, it would be cooler if you would have. Yeah, made his way up through the bigs.
Starting pitcher for the
Never let the facts get away from you. Anyways, without messing up more of his intro, let's welcome Tom Yozwa. talk.
Ooh, hello.
That video that
There's
Tom
been time,
wanted
so
to
we're gonna
play.
watch this video. We're gonna stare at the screen now for 3 minutes. I had a video, and then I had some follow-up stuff on the video. Are there any of the pictures or any of the bullets?
Pictures are there, everything but the
video,
audio of the
video
video.
works. You just have to narrate it. Can you narrate the video?
And I'm just gonna work behind you. Just trust me. I texted the guy who runs this, and he said,
I just, when I was talking to JD, you know, a lot of the stuff we get into, we kind of branch out into different areas. Last week was interesting, to say the least. But still, I mean, I like to learn stuff, and last week was a learning moment, you know. Whether we volunteer doing something like we talked about last week, or volunteer at an old folks home, or, you know, whatever we do as a group is great. I mean, it's all just basically serving. But we were talking earlier in the week about, you know, kind of getting into stuff like self kind of stuff. I know last year we got into a lot of relational stuff and whatnot. I'm a very spiritual type of person where I kind of get deep into my own head every once in a while. I don't know how you guys are as far as, you know, we mentioned stressed out. I was talking to Ben. Welcome, Ben, by the way, from Oklahoma City.
Yeah, buddy.
Everybody look at Ben.
There's Ben.
But you know, like when I'm basically in sales. I've been in sales for 30 plus years. So when you do stuff like that, your emotions are always all over the place. But I try to find a place in myself where I can center myself, and I can learn, and I can read things, or I can just reflect on a day, or reflect on a week, or reflect on something that I did that was positive, or not so much. This week, as JD and I were talking about kind of what we were going to do, I actually found, for whatever reason, Maya Angelou has always kind of resonated with me. I don't know if anybody's ever seen her talk before, but she's a poet, and she's an incredible human being. She died about 2 weeks ago, two years ago. It's like 2016 or something. She used to be on Oprah all the time. It was like a picture of he's up there with Oprah earlier. She did the speech for Bill Clinton after he was elected president. She did about a 20-minute speech on kind of the art of, you know, I don't know, she just kind of went into this whole thing. It was a super movie, it really was. So if you ever get a chance to look at her videos, they're really, really cool. The one that I was going to play that I don't think is going to play is basically she's just talking about her relationship with her kids, the things that are important to her. She gave some bullet points from the speech that I wrote down that we won't see, but maybe one of these days we will. But she just talks about self-reflection, you know, being a fighter, you know, don't settle for mediocrity, stuff like that. If we can go to the next, do we get that or no? You know,
We're gonna try.
we're gonna give room roll, Tom.
right.
We're not just messing with you to sabotage your time.
That's okay. I
You're
can
doing good with all the distractions.
Let's go back to when I pitched for the game.
Tell us
I was a
those
one,
two.
you might never remember me. I was a one-batter specialist. All right, here we go. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then it is what it is. But I do have faith in that.
All right, that was our last best try.
You know, you could maybe turn on closed captions.
Yeah.
You can try that.
All right.
And really, it's not that big. Of a
That's our last just
It's only about a 45-minute video. So we'll see.
I'll bring the Bluetooth speaker next time and try.
Anyhow, so
Yeah, let's do that.
these are the takeaways that I had that I believe what she said. These are the takeaways. If you teach, you have to live what you teach. Goes without saying. It's your life and your world, and take on the battle. That's a huge thing for me. Every day I think about stuff like that. She said this is something that her grandmother said to her. She said, "You know what's right, just do right." Makes great sense, obviously. Dare to be bigger and stretch yourself. I mean, never, again, you know, we're all wired differently. Not everybody's wired to be up here all the time, and I get that. You know, I certainly have my times down in here, but then I think over the years I've taken my spread kind of more like this, which is kind of where, you know, more little waves instead of, you know, gigantic 20-footers. We go to the next slide. Oh, right here? Just swipe. Okay. So, some of the things that I took out of her speech again were, and again, going back into thinking about myself, is well, like, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? I think my strengths are being a good friend. I like to think that I'm a good person. I think people that know me would probably say that I'm a good person. Try to work hard. I've always lived by, and I kind of learned this from my dad, is work hard, play harder. Like in the summertime when we're playing golf, I'm working hard, but I also, it's like I tell my boss, I don't know if you met my boss before, but he's a super good guy. And he knows that if I work hard and I get results from working hard, then I'm going to play hard too. It's like if you don't see me on a Friday, you know that I had a good Monday through Thursday. That's pretty much the way that I look at things. My weaknesses, I brought my wife in today, Jennifer.
I thought that was a lot funnier than they did.
No,
It's still early.
My wife's retired. She worked for World Public Schools for 30 years, so she gets to sleep in every day and take naps. That's good stuff. I think my weaknesses, again, everybody has a mirror. I look in the mirror and I know what my weaknesses are. I struggle being a good listener sometimes. Like to me, Jennifer actually said this to me last week, and there's a lot of times when I'm listening, it's kind of a superficial kind of thing. It's like I'm not hearing, you know what I mean? So a lot of times when I listen, I'm thinking about the next thing that I'm going to say, and it happens to be constantly on the phone. Again, I'm in sales, so if I'm talking to somebody, I'm always thinking about something they said and the one thing I want to say to counter that, rather than really listen to what they're saying, and then pause, and then say what I want to say. Right? I've been working on that for years. Jamie and I have talked before about like therapy stuff, and I'm not ashamed to say for 15 years I've been seeing, probably 8 years now, the same person. I mean, it's not like I go in there and lay on a couch, but I just have a lady in Boulder that knows Tom, and every once in a while I just go see her. I see her about every 2 months. I see her in I think on the 22nd or something. Sometimes I'll go in there, I have nothing to say. Talk about, the weather and my crappy golf game. And every time she's like, Tom, it's going to be okay. If you make a double bogey, you got to work your way through it. But anyhow, so I mean, all that stuff is good for you. It kind of feeds you and helps you grow. And I always say, treat the people, always, this is very simple one-on-one stuff, but treat people the way you want to be treated. That's just absolutely that simple. Into the next slide, if you go to the next one, right? We'll do the next one. I'm not going to go through like my entire professional life. Is there anybody in the room who knows who this is?
It's not you.
It's not me. Is anybody a sports talk listener over the years? That's Irv. So that's Irv Brown. I picked up an old picture of Irv. So in 1980, I graduated college after playing with the Yankees. I keep going. In 1988, I was 25 years old. I just finished my first sales job. I did go to UNC. And my major was telecommunications, which was like radio and TV. And I was cutting and splicing tape and all kinds of stuff. And I decided to go into sales. So in 88, I went to go work for a radio station called K-Big. And K-Big was literally like the original sports talk station in the entire country. I mean, there was no sports talk back in the day. There was no satellite radio. I mean, there was pretty local stuff like in New York and everything. But Irv and Joe, his partner Joe Williams, Irv was a pioneer in Denver sports talk. He was probably from 1975 to 2015 or so. He was on 40 years on the radio. Irv passed away last March. He had so many people at his funeral, there was an overflow of the church. They had to take the cafeteria of this Methodist church in Broomfield, and there were another 100 people watching the funeral on a closed caption in the back room. It was incredible. The one thing about Irv, again, I worked with him on and off for about 10 years. The one thing about him is he knew how to treat people, man, this guy. It didn't make any difference if you were a janitor in the church or if you were Bobby Knight and everybody in between. He knew how to treat people. I listened to him on the radio. He would just have people eating out of his hands. And I used to watch his mannerisms. Like I'd take him on client calls and stuff like that. And Irv just knew how to make people feel good about themselves. He didn't judge anybody. Everybody that mattered walked out with their chest puffed out just a little bit more. And I got a good chance when he retired from radio in like in 2017, or it was like 82 when he died. We had a deal out at the Blake Street Tavern right by Coors Field. And Irv was just sitting there, and people coming up to him saying hello, and I got a chance to sit down with him for no more than about 3 or 4 minutes. And his wife, Pat, was there. His wife was also an educator. I got to sit down with Irv, and I got to tell him how much he meant to me, with a little tear coming out of my eye. And I said, Irv, I said, you don't meet a lot of people in life like you. I said, you made a difference in my life, and everybody has somebody that makes a difference. He was my grandfather, my dad, just all the typical. But Irv was a huge part of my life. I didn't sit there and I didn't hang out with him. He's 82 years old, I didn't hang out with him or anything. But I knew the man quite well, and I respected him that much. And that little 3 minutes that I had with him, I swear I'll never forget that as long as I live. And at his funeral, I went back to that moment. I'm like, wow, it was super, super cool that, that I actually said that too. Because there's a lot of times you think it and you don't say it, right? I said it. And all he did is he put his hand right here and he goes, Tommy, that means a lot. And I wasn't Bobby Knight. I was just Tom sales guy. I did sell a lot of stuff and I made it money. But anyhow, so that's, Irv just kind of meant that to me. I also had a chance, as I kind of wrap up here, I don't think I have another slide. So you do not. I also had a chance to work with my dad for 12 years. So I went from being in radio to getting in the mortgage business. I've been doing that for 16 years now. And the first 12 years I got to work with my dad, and that was super cool. I learned good things from Dick. I learned our walls were paper thin, right? And my dad would come in. He'd come in for about, he'd work a good solid 8 or 10 hours a week. Like, Dad, you're killing yourself. Come in shorts and go to the pinery, Return calls to the pinery, that's great. I learned the art of under-promising and over-delivering. Thank you, Dad. Anyhow, so I kind of, in wrapping up, I just, I think it's, like with our table talks today, it's just kind of learning about, what's important to you. Getting back into like strengths and weaknesses and the mirror that we all have, and what we like about ourselves, what we don't. Like I talked about, like listening. I could be a better listener. There's other things we could get into for other talks, but I just appreciate the opportunity to get up in front of guys. I don't know a lot of you guys, but I think we all fight the same thing, right? I mean, it's all whether it's relationships, which we talked about forever last year, or whatnot. But so that's pretty much it for today, and then let's just dig in small groups and go from there, right?
All right, so yeah, like Tom said, here's some guiding questions. Use them if you need to. Go on a different direction if you want to meet your tables a little bit more. I think we have some overflow back there, so if you guys want to huddle up here, I'll join this table up here. But let's just meet each other and use these as guides. But as Tom said, I mean, there's some nuggets in there that he was talking about, like the way we treat people, right? It doesn't have to be your CEO to get the respect and the kindness that you have. Just small nuggets, talk about them, and meet each other, and let's continue to develop this. So,
just real quick, the only other thing I want to say, like we haven't said this season, but I wanted to make sure, like we go like 6:30 to 7:30. But if there's ever a time that anybody has to leave, we said this last year, like we don't want anybody ever to feel like bad. Everybody has commitments. Like please don't ever feel like bad for having to go take care of what you have to take care of, be it work or family or whatever it may be. So I want to make sure we said that formally because we kind of like reinforced that last year. We want to make sure this feel like something everybody can just be a part of whenever you can be a part of it. If there's no like cost to entry, and then no one's judging you if you gotta take off, just so that nobody feels like, hey, I gotta like stay if we're going long. We try to be respectful of the time, but sometimes there's just good table talks that are going on. So don't feel like you have to cut it off if you're having a good conversation. At the same time, if you gotta get out of here, whatever you do.
yep.
Please do.
What's up, Justin?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So one thing I'd be interested in the smaller groups, and I was going to ask Tom this. So it's great to talk about the strengths and weaknesses, but I would be curious on what mechanisms or things that you do to actually do self-reflection. If it's in church, if it's through prayer, if it's through talking with your spouse, your partner, your friends, because any opportunity I can take those nuggets on, this is how David does self-reflection. I might be willing to try it. So everybody does it differently.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious.
That's a really good point. I mean, and one of the reasons that the Harbor was started is to try to get the wisdom. I mean, we're all at a different walk of life, right? Some people have had to deal with this for a long time. Some people are just dealing with stuff now, and so I think that's a really good point. We're trying to learn from each other. So, yeah, that's great.
And the good news is, Justin, Plucker's sitting right next to you, and he self-reflects all the time. He's not a world of knowledge there. He's educated.